Welcome everybody to the Divine Mercy University Spiritual Direction Certificate Program, helping others flourish in their relationship with the Lord. Just as an introduction, my name is Greg Shapero. I'm the admissions advisor here at DMU for the SDC program. I've been here for almost 2 years now, but working within this sort of environment of the university system for a little over 6 years. But I've really enjoyed enrolling with spiritual direction and getting to know you folks. So here with me are my co-hosts, which are Maria Brackett, who is the program director for the SDC program. And we also have Father Edward Horning, who is a guest host with us. So I'm going to open up the floor to each of them just to share about themselves, and then we'll get started.
Thanks so much, Greg. It's a gift to be able to be here with everyone, and we're super happy to have Father Ed here with us, who's a student of the certificate program. As Greg said, I'm the program director here at Divine Mercy University for the certificate program. And I've got the gift to be able to just get to know some of the students a little bit better as they go through the program. And we're so happy to be able to kind of doing these different webinars where we get the opportunity to talk to some of our students. We had Deacon Scott on just a few weeks ago, and now we get Father Ed. So Father Ed, I know that I know you and I know you're a student of the program, but why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us where you're from, what you do, a little bit about you.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation. I am a priest for the Diocese of San Diego, a diocesan priest, and have been ordained for 18 years. And I have worked all 18 years on the U.S.-Mexico border in the desert between Yuma and San Diego. So out in California, we have a region which is very hot, but has also a lot of people. And I just have loved my assignment. And I entered into the SDC, the Spiritual Direction Certificate Program, in the fall of 2020. After having gone on sabbatical in 2019, which was kind of like, it was an independent study dedicated to reading spiritual direction material and studying scripture. So that kind of got allowed for that trajectory to come to a better fruition in joining the spiritual direction certification program. I took a few electives in seminary for spiritual direction, but have benefited tremendously and greatly from the SDC program. So about finishing up the SDC program.
That's great, Father Ed. So it sounds like you've really had an interest all along in your priesthood in some way or another in spiritual direction.
Yes, I benefited from spiritual direction as a student at San Diego State University at our Newman Center. And it was spiritual direction and God's guidance, which led me to enter the seminary. And once I entered the seminary, although there were struggles, I didn't look back. I just felt confirmed by the Lord. And so before entering seminary, all through seminary and all throughout priesthood have benefited from spiritual direction. And although not every priest might have the charism to be a spiritual director, I have kind of always had that kind of attraction and desire to be a spiritual director. So I have over the years, I cannot accompany more than 6 people. So the 6 that I've been accompanying I've accompanied for some years now. The diocese also gives to me younger men who are discerning priesthood. And so that's kind of a temporary as need basis. But yes, I've always had an interest in the spiritual life, spiritual theology, and also spiritual direction.
So Father, how did you hear about the spiritual direction certificate program?
I was on Divine Mercy University's mailing list for some time. I started going to pastoral workshops with the Institute for Psychological Sciences in the 2000s. So for a while there, I hadn't missed. So I had really benefited from all the pastoral workshops that were being offered through the Institute of Psychological Sciences in union with, at that time, it was Sacerdos. So I remember going to Bethesda, to Thornwood, maybe a few other places, and meeting the faculty from IPS, which later became Divine Mercy University. So I have been benefiting from the anthropology of Divine Mercy University for a long time now, probably since 2009 or so, 2008, 2009, and had been paying attention to retreats. And I had an interest in the counseling degree. I don't think it's God's plan for me now. My bishop told me no, so there's that. But I'm grateful that the bishop allowed me to take the spiritual direction certification program. So I've benefited from IPS/Divine Mercy University for many, many years. Have recordings, and so I was on the mailing list, and I had just come out of the sabbatical, which I studied some spiritual direction resources. And then during lockdown, I got an email which spoke about the SDC program. I said, okay, this is a good time to start taking classes. So that's kind of how that happened.
Thanks. Then what has your experience been like, just in general, Father, in the program?
It's been very challenging, but also a tremendous blessing. Challenging in the sense of going back to school, writing again, reading, having to read a certain amount of material before a certain date, writing reflections, responding to classmates, participating in the videos and in some of the Zooms. So it's been challenging in that to go back to school, so to speak, but because it's an area of such deep interest for me. It wasn't the material or the desire to learn was there, and there wasn't stress as far as grades go, but there was a little bit of stress on, okay, getting through the material and trying to interiorize it, to understand it, and then also being able to contribute to the discussions that take place in the class through the canvas, and then responding by the certain deadline. So it was challenging, at sometimes overwhelming. It does take time, but in the end, I think, and I've been speaking to some of those whom I accompany in direction, they notice a difference in the way the sessions go now. So, and I hope to follow that trajectory. What I'm doing now, as I'm coming to the end of the course, is I'm going back to modules and just not giving myself a week to understand it, but giving myself more time to go deeper into the material. And what the course has done is connected me with a lot of new resources, or older resources that I was not familiar with in the past. So I think the program has allowed me to get up to date on who the great spiritual authors are right now, who have been editing and, who have absorbed the tradition and have maybe kind of edited it and then given us best practices and insight for direction as we have it today. Yeah.
Father, so what did you find most helpful about the program?
What was most helpful was precisely that, being connected with spiritual theology. In seminary, it wasn't that our spiritual theology was lacking, but we really were using some late 20th century theologians who were so when, for example, we didn't read Father Jordan Amon or weren't connected to, we maybe read a little bit of Teresa of Avila, but being allowed and encouraged to go deeper in grace, theology of grace, reading the spiritual authors like Saint Ignatius of Loyola, going deeper into Saint John of the Cross. So all of that has helped me in my spiritual life, in my understanding of spiritual theology, but has also allowed me to share some of those fruits with directees and with people who are not directees. A lot of the material can be used for adult formation, because it's part of the tradition of the church, this rich treasure that we have as regards to spirituality and prayer, discernment, spiritual direction.
Mhm. So neat. And Father, what would you say was the most difficult? It's kind of sounds like you talked about the time and just trying to, was it kind of like the time commitment and just getting used to online learning, or was there something else?
Yes, getting used to online learning, that was new for me. But also what has benefited me has also been the most difficult. That is like learning skills or honing skills, which I didn't have before. I had some idea of reflecting back to someone, showing, trying to show the person that I maybe had understood or was letting the person know that I had, and was kind of giving them a synthesis of what they had shared. That was one of the things I had learned in my elective class. But deepening, evoking, using conjecture, these are skills which were entirely new to me. And I don't consider myself to be very good at them, and I still want to grow in them. But that was also very challenging for me, was to try and learn those skills and then to have ourselves be recorded. And also during the 2 times that we would meet as a group and be put into different teams where we would do kind of a practicum, those were very intimidating. And to be honest, I got performance anxiety, because, okay, this is going to be dissected. People are watching this right now. And you have professionals who may even during that session, they might intervene.
Mhm.
So that could be a little bit intimidating, but I know it's for the good. And that's probably one of them. I mean, there's so many things that are beneficial to the certificate program, but to be honest, I was doubtful of those at first. Oh, come on. What can feelings have to do? I came from a kind of a culture where feelings are not always to be trusted, but can see how the Lord places within us deep desire or passion. And if we journey with a directee in going to the very deep place of their soul, well, you discover gifts that God has given, passion or guidance. So it took me a little bit to buy into that, but then also to learn the skills as well. So, which for that reason, I'm still kind of I have a group supervision tomorrow. And so for that reason, I'm still in group supervision, is that I still want to try and grow in those skills of deepening, of evoking, of accompanying the directee and seeing what is in the very interior of the being, what the Lord might be placing there. Yeah.
Mhm. So, yeah, Father, you spoke a little bit about the residencies when the students come for that 4-day training. And I don't know if the people understand well what you were saying, but how we have these role plays and where you sit down and in a small group of 3 or 4 and a faculty member is there, kind of, you're going through scenarios, you're kind of doing like a mock session, and they're giving you feedback about it. So it is difficult, and we realize that, right? To be coached in that way. But I think at the end of the day, it probably is super helpful, right? Because you get a lot of feedback and you're able to correct or learn skills like in real life.
I left both residency experiences affirmed, but also I don't want to say that they were stressful, but they were very challenging. I had not been challenged in that way, so I don't want to scare people, but they were blessed because we also had time for prayer. We had a morning of recollection. It was a blessing to be with classmates and staff and teachers whom we had maybe seen each other on a Zoom, or we had seen a recorded video. So that was a real blessing to have that camaraderie. So yes, very challenging, but also a tremendous blessing. And I should note that I don't know how I slipped under the radar, but I didn't realize that the program, if you follow the trajectory, is at a kind of a minimum. It's 2 years. I thought, oh, this is going to be a half a year, a year. Then, like, I think it was towards the end of SDC 100 or part of 200. Oh no, this is at least a 2-year process. What?
Wow. Yeah. Pretty thorough, right?
Yes, very thorough. And I see why. There's a reason why it's that long.
Mhm. Yeah. The huge responsibility and that sacred ground of, accompanying someone in their relationship with the Lord. Father, you also spoke a little bit about supervision, which, some spiritual direction programs have, some don't. We really have it like as an integral part of our program. You do that. You started in supervision in the 5th course and then continued in the 6th course. Can you speak a little bit about that experience?
Yes, it's probably one of my most favorite parts of the formation is to have experienced either counselors or spiritual directors to be able to guide our conversation, intervene, and also to share with us, I want to say, possible interventions, possible paths, things to look out for, pitfalls to avoid. So it's been, and the group supervision for me has been less intimidating than the residency kind of evaluation of the maybe practicums that we do. Group supervision, you're also affirmed by your peers. They make amazing, my classmates just blow me away by the depth of their relationship with God, with the wisdom that God gives to them, and the interventions that they make with their directees and the questions that they ask me. I'm blown away constantly in group supervision. And so that's one of the ways that I learned. I'm not a very good, okay, here's the theory, and then to follow it. I also learned by, okay, no, that you probably made a mistake in going that direction. Here's what you could have done better. This you did really well. What a good intervention. That was really the Holy Spirit working. So that I wouldn't trade for it. Everything, even if it hurts, has been for the good in the program.
Thanks so much, Father, for sharing that. Is there anything that surprised you? Well, besides the fact that it's longer than you thought the program was going to be, is there anything else that surprised you about the program that you didn't really think from the get-go, you didn't think that this was going to be a part of it, or it would help you in that way, or anything else?
There were a lot of surprises. One personal surprise was in my own life, I had thought that my own discernment and my own vocation was pretty fragile. But with all the reflection and growth in self-knowledge, I recognized that the Lord had built my vocation upon his own rock. I grew in my understanding of my vocation and knowledge of self and of the people of who have been a good example of spiritual influence in my life. That was a great surprise. Another surprise was how much we use from counseling, from psychology. I was a little bit intimidated by that. I almost minored. I was maybe 2 or 3 units away from a minor in psychology at San Diego State. And so this, although I'm not going to get a recognition for having minored, I do consider what we have here to really have rounded out my basic understanding of counseling, and I think it's maybe the 200 course where we use a lot of psychology in order to understand relationships and maybe woundedness that people might have. Mm-hmm. That was a surprise. Another surprise, I attribute it to the Holy Spirit. I had to stand back and just be at awe at how the Holy Spirit is raising up maybe a small number of people, but for me, it seems like a large number of people, spiritual directors throughout the country and throughout the world. Wow, I have the belief that spiritual direction is going to be a major means for the new evangelization of this type of accompaniment, of really sincerely accompanying people and really sincerely discerning the will of God. And so to see my classmates, I know we shouldn't compare ourselves, but I would consider myself probably at the lower end, and I consider a lot of my classmates to be probably more talented than I am. And I know we shouldn't compare, but I was inspired, and I that was a great blessing to see. Wow, Holy Spirit, you're raising up people for the new evangelization, for renewal and reform in the lives of your people. So that was a pleasant surprise. And just being able to go back to school, to learn, there were just a lot of surprises along the way. I ended up really cherishing the ability to write again and to reflect, and to be able to share at a personal level with classmates and with professors. So there was a lot of surprises along the way.
Well, those sound beautiful, Father. Just a lot of different gifts too for you, which you probably didn't think of. You thought, well, I'm getting in this to learn how to help other people, right? And just beautiful, even what you said about your priestly vocation, how the Lord just, as you had that opportunity to kind of look over your life and your vocation, just to see, I think you're probably in the 200 where you kind of do those exercises of looking at your relationships throughout your life, or at the end of 100 where you do kind of like that spiritual life map and things like that. So they're beautiful opportunities. Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know about that, but that's beautiful. Father, what would you say to a parish priest or diocesan priest that was looking into the program?
I would encourage a priest, especially if he feels called to spiritual direction, to really consider the program and what might be needed from him. So in my own case, we have 1 day of rest per week, and I used part of my day of rest for the reading and writing, but I also needed to block out at least a half a day or more during the week for other reading and video and writing. So I'm the type of person that needs long blocks of time to read, to digest, and then to synthesize and order my thoughts. So to a parish priest, I would say you need anywhere from 8 to 12 to maybe 14 hours a week during the 8-week quarters or semesters. And then during the off season between the quarters or the semesters, to kind of digest when possible and to go over the material. So I hope that answers the question with regards to time, but also this almost was like a little master's degree. The depth, the amount of time, the knowledge, the skills that are introduced and honed during this time are extremely helpful for anyone who aspires to be a spiritual director, but especially a priest. I think we have this idea that if you become a priest with holy orders, you automatically can be a spiritual director. That's not true. Not everyone is called to it. It's a charism. Certainly every priest is called to be a confessor, someone who celebrates the sacred mysteries, but not all might have the calling to be a spiritual director. I think many of us would like for our priests to have that skill, and it would be a good thing for many of our priests to have that skill or charism. But I do want to encourage other priests, whether religious or diocesan, to consider the program, because it's very thorough, it's very rewarding, it's very fruitful, not only for him, but for the people whom he may serve in the present or the future.
Thank you so much, Father. I know that Greg is probably chomping at the bit to ask you a question, so we haven't let him chime in here. Greg, is there anything that you wanted to ask Father?
Well, one thing came to mind. You had mentioned how how this program has, you had mentioned how you have activity with faith formation for younger men that are currently discerning or entering into the religious life. So one thing that comes to mind: how much has this program benefited your activity in offering faith formation for others?
the sound cut out a little bit. How has it benefited?
Oh yeah. So how much has this program benefited your activity within faith formation, since that's a ministry in itself? But how much has this also sort of overlapped with your activity in offering faith formation for these young men that are entering into this vocation?
Ironically, the diocese or formation of priests has been trusting me more and more, and it might not be related to the SDC program. Maybe it is. Maybe God's in His providence. But they've been sending me more seminarians to mentor in parish experience, and then men in my region who are discerning a vocation, they come to me for spiritual direction. So I've been able to use those new skills of deepening with them, of evoking and listening and conjecturing. So it's kind of has helped me as a mentor, which is not necessarily spiritual direction, because they have their own spiritual director, but also to help those guys who potentially might be entering formation, seminarians in the desert region who are considering religious life. So before entering the seminary, I thought God was calling me to be a first grade Catholic school teacher. That's what I really wanted to be. So there's always a teacher within me. I can't not teach. I know the Lord has placed that on my heart. So right now, for example, I was afraid of St. Catherine of Siena, and now I'm teaching a course on the dialogues. We're going through the dialogues of St. Catherine of Siena, and we're going through her dialogue, but also taking a look at the scriptures she references, the virtues that she talks about. So, and of course, I'm incorporating some of the spiritual theology that we learned in the SDC program. So, in that regard, I have overcome. Well, she's becoming a good friend of mine, St. Catherine. I was afraid of her at first. I was a much more closer buddy with St. Teresa of Avila, but now I'm also benefiting from St. Catherine of Siena and teaching, having the courage to say, okay, we're going to journey through these dialogues together, and we're going to learn from her and hopefully grow in our union with God.
Wow, that's beautiful, Father. Yeah.
I have one other question. I appreciate you sharing that. I have one other question, and this is sort of a two-part, and one of our guests is asking the first part, which I'll answer that one, but then I'm going to take from that and ask you a question, Father Edward. So Tanya asked, what is the acceptance of the laity in taking spiritual direction from a layperson as opposed to a priest? And so I'll just maybe chime in with that one. So as you're seeing on the screen, we have a couple of images from recent residencies, and you're seeing a collection of different people. We have priests that are in the program. We have religious sisters that are in the program. We also have consecrated lay people. We have secular lay. So it really is a wide range of individuals. And sometimes they'll find a layperson offering spiritual direction to another layperson. Sometimes it is a priest offering spiritual direction to a layperson. You'll see a priest offering spiritual direction to a deacon, it really can range. This is a ministry, a calling for all sorts of people that are in all sorts of vocations. So hopefully that answers your question, Tanya. So Father Edward, just sort of running off of that, what sort of fruits have you seen in being in this program where you're having all sorts of different individuals from different vocations? How has that sort of helped you as a priest, but also as a spiritual director, just hearing their sides?
It's been a tremendous blessing. I've been tremendously inspired by my classmates, just how deep their love is for God, for the church, and how they really do have a calling to be a spiritual director. I'm hoping that more and more people recognize that this this is a calling that the Lord can give to whom he wills, regardless of one's vocation, whether married or single, religious, consecrated, ordained. The indelible mark in the sacrament of baptism and confirmation, those sacraments are continually unfolding in our life. If St. Paul was talking to Timothy about confirmation this past Sunday in the readings, where he says, stir into flame the gift you have been given by the laying on of hands, the Lord can give gifts to whom he wills, and it's not limited to the sacrament of holy orders. And I'm hoping, and I think more and more people are recognizing that it's a matter of getting the word out. That spiritual direction is a gift that God gives to the whole church, not just to a few people in the church, but he gives this gift, this charism, if you will, to some in the life of the church for the benefit of hopefully many in the life of the church who are desiring God, who are desiring to live God's will in their life. So yeah, I'm hoping, it's an exciting time just to see all the different folks from different ages, different ethnicities, backgrounds, and way of life, different professions as well, doctors and nurses and moms and dads and deacons and religious and consecrated women. It's a tremendous garden of vocations and backgrounds which have discerned a call within a call, if you will, like the call to be a spiritual director as part of their own living out their following of Jesus in their life.
So well put. Thanks, Father Ed.
You're welcome.
Greg, are there, should we open up to any more questions that the audience might have?
Yeah, let's do that. So again, for all the guests that are here, you're welcome to drop your questions in the chat section or in the Q&A section, and we'll just read them off and we'll go from there. And so Tanya, just wanted to confirm. So she said, so assuming that the secular or consecrated lay people have managed after this course to use their gift to spiritual direction, people may be in their parish. So it sounds like she's asking, could they serve as a spiritual director in their parish, in their immediate parish? That's very common. Many times they work with individuals who are parishioners alongside them. Sometimes it is just other folks within the diocese. It really can range. Sometimes it's within a small immediate apostolate. There are even people that might be contracted by the diocese to serve as spiritual directors for those that are seeking them out. So it really can go in many different ways, but that's one of the benefits of this. And this is also something that the students will get to partake in once they enter into their practicum hours.
Definitely. And there are definitely students in the program that have been sent by their parish priest to take the program, to serve in their parishes. I think, Father Ed, you would love to have a spiritual director serving in your parish, I can imagine.
I have two in the program. They're right behind me. So
yes, exactly. I didn't want to disclose that information, but you can do that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, exactly, Father Ed. You saw that as soon as you got into it, you were like, oh my gosh, I need more people helping.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and there might be more coming. So God willing, we'll hopefully send you some more. Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, I would definitely think that a parish priest. There's a lot of different ministries and work that's done in a parish, but like Father Ed, like you were saying, this one-on-one, just kind of meeting people where they are and helping them to see the Lord or hear the Lord better in their lives. I think it's just, it's a beautiful service. A lot of what the church offers is done in groups or in community, right? Through the liturgy and through small groups, which has a certain place, and it's beautiful too, right? Well, nothing takes the place of the liturgy, but this one-on-one accompaniment I think, yeah, I think it's very important because everyone is an individual and the Lord has a personal path with each person.
It's very personal, and it can be, it can add so much depth of intimacy with God in someone's life. Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, you said it's a sacred ground, it's sacred territory. Each person is the fruit of the love of God, and God has a plan. God has destined that person for happiness and for love, and to discover one's path and to be confirmed and affirmed in that, and one's calling is, it's nothing like it. So it's a tremendous blessing. God is the source of our joy, and there's just great joy when you're living God's dream, you're living God's will for you. Doesn't mean everything's there's gonna be a cross there, but there's gonna be some challenges. But it's a tremendous blessing to make use of the one life that you have. That we only have one life, and so to be able to give that to God and others in the way that He's moving and has given you specific gifts for is, it's the best. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
I have another question from one of our guests. So Yolanda asks, this might be a great question for you, Maria, and to you, Father Edward. So she asked, other than loving God and wanting to bring others to Him, what would you say are the top 3 qualities or skills a spiritual director should have?
You go first, Father Ed.
So the question cut off a little bit. So what skills that a director should have? Is that right?
Yeah, she said, like, besides loving God and wanting to bring others to Him, what skills do you think a spiritual director should have?
Listening, patience, a love for God, a love for Scripture, the teachings of the church. Those are the ones off the top of my head. Yeah, I'll let you go, Maria.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, Father. I mean, of course, a certain understanding of the theological context of that. And that's what we try to do in the program, is give you an understanding of what that spiritual life looks like as it develops through the life of a person. But also, like Father said, that listening skill. And then I don't mean to make this sound cliche, but I always say that spiritual directors are kind of hidden figures, because they're behind the scenes supporting people, and it's a confidential relationship. It's not like you publicize who you're giving spiritual direction to, and right, they can tell people what they want, but it's a really hidden place because you're just helping them. Maybe no one knows who you're giving spiritual direction to, but you're just trying to help them and encourage them, and ask them questions and listen to them, reflect back what you're hearing and what you're seeing, so that their eyes might be opened a little bit more, like St. Ignatius says. The eyes might be opened just a little bit more to the presence of the Lord in their life and what He might be doing, and understanding that narrative, the way that He's walking alongside of them. It's really a source of encouragement, so much. So I think that answers it between the two of us.
Yeah, good. Let's see. I imagine some folks are still trying to wrap their heads around their next question, and that's fine.
Did you want to go and explain a little bit just about if they're interested in the program and stuff?
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to do. So, for many of you, and I recognize some of your names, you may already have a good sense of what the program is, and we may have even had a one-on-one. But for all of you that are brand new and are just now researching the program, just to share with you what to expect in the program. So the first thing is that, as Father Edward mentioned earlier, there's 6 courses that all the students will be taking, and all of the courses are done online. So you don't have to travel for the courses themselves. You can take these courses from home, and they're also done asynchronously. So instead of having to log into a Zoom meeting at 12 o'clock or at 3 o'clock, what you're actually doing is logging into Canvas. That's the online platform, and you're participating in discussion boards. So imagine how, for instance, Facebook is in a way like a discussion board where someone might post something and then others will be able to post on top of that and respond to it. And that's what the activity is primarily going to be, where your instructor will post a topic, the students will get to respond to that, they'll get to respond to each other, and that's really the classroom setting. So this means that because it's set up this way, it's going to give you more flexibility as far as when you want to log into your classes and when you want to set that time aside for you to participate. So along with that, while it's not 100%, again, I like to say that it's primarily online. It's mostly done online, but there are a couple of face-to-face components. And we were talking about the residencies and the practicum. And these would be the face-to-face components, which this is actually what makes the program even richer. The residencies, which we had mentioned, where the students come together, they have that camaraderie online. They actually get to finally meet together with their instructors and with each other. And this is where they'll be able to hone in on their skills a little bit more, and they'll be able to, in mock sessions, practice the skills and knowledge that they're learning. So the residencies, in fact, let me scroll down to that one more time. The residencies happen on campus in Sterling, Virginia. And they happen at 2 different times. The first time will be during your 3rd term. So that's about 10 weeks from when you actually begin, more or less. And then the second residency will happen during your 5th term. And that will happen during week 2. And that's going to serve as a launch into your practicum hours. So that's the other face-to-face component. This is where you'll be able to log your 60 hours in practicing spiritual direction with directees. And again, that could be in your parish, that could be within your apostolate. So again, this will be in your local area. So where am I? Okay, so the other thing is these are the courses that students would be taking. So as you're seeing, the 3rd course, Relating Skills and Spiritual Direction, this is where your first residency is built in. And then the 5th course, Advanced Spiritual Direction Skills and Practicum, this is where your second residency is built in. So again, there's some time spread apart. So you're not expected to travel for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, but rather you'll be on campus for 4 days. And that will go from Thursday until Sunday. So again, we make sure that it overlaps with the weekend, so you're not having to take extensive time away from your family or from your work. So the other thing that I think is important is just to talk more about the time frame. And Father Edward was sharing about what his experience has been as far as the time commitment. And it really can vary based on students. Some students might be faster readers, or maybe the material's more familiar with them, so they could breeze right through it. For others, Father Edward and I think myself would be included, we like to take our time when we read the material, and we might need to go back to certain things. And so taking a little bit more extra time really does count for a lot for us to absorb the information more. But usually, and just based on patterns that we've seen, usually students are committing somewhere between 6 to 9 hours per week. So it's a good idea for you that are, for those of you who are exploring this idea, to see if this would also work within your schedule. And if you are a consecrated religious, checking with your superior to see if this is something that will also work within your schedule, and if you have the permission for that. And also speaking with your families, for those of you that have a spouse, and making sure that you have that support from them, because this is a real commitment going into this program and preparing for this ministry. So the other thing we had also mentioned is that each course is 8 weeks, and you're taking only one course at a time. So that way you can further focus on the material that's in front of you. And then also there are breaks between your courses. So instead of taking one course and then immediately after those 8 weeks, back to back going into another course, you're going to have a break. And those breaks can go between 8, 9, 10 weeks, depending on where we are in the academic calendar. But this does give some breathing room. This gives you time to, if needed, to reflect on the material that you previously learned, or if you just need to take that full step back to rejuvenate yourself, and that's what's best for you as a student. The other benefit is that these breaks do fall during major holidays. So, Father Edward, you're a priest, and Holy Week is very busy. Typically, from what I hear from all the priests that I know, how beneficial was it for you to have that break during Holy Week, rather than juggling your material while also preparing for Holy Week?
It was good. In fact, I think because Easter was late this year, I don't remember if we had a course during Holy Week these 2 times, but there wasn't a time where it conflicted too much with the liturgical year. So I don't have any recollection, to be honest. So that seems to be, did we have I don't remember if we had.
No, we don't, Father.
Okay.
I think that's what Greg is trying to say. Like around Christmas, we don't run a course.
Oh, okay.
In December,
No,
and we don't.
My classmates all wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's probably why it felt a little bit less stressful. But yeah, I mean, during Holy Week, during Christmas, during Thanksgiving, these will be considered downtimes for the students. So, so again, you won't have to try to divide up your time between submitting assignments and also participating in these really good times of year. And then also, as Father Edward had mentioned, it's a 2-year program. So it is a 2-year commitment. And that's, again, taking one course at a time. And that also includes those breaks as well. So the other thing that I think we should cover is the cost. So the cost of the program, and I want to first highlight, there's room to bring the tuition down. It really can depend, and if you are religious or if you're a volunteer with your parish. And so if you're active in any of these ways, then hopefully when we speak one-on-one, we can talk more about that and see what sort of options there are. But before any of those, the cost per course is $778, and then each residency is $1,000. And that $1,000 is going to cover your lodging, it'll cover your materials, it'll cover most of your meals. So the only thing that the students are responsible for would be their travel and then 3 of their dinners. But everything else will be covered with that $1,000. And by the way, that reminds me, books are included as well. There's no additional cost for books. These are ebooks, they're electronic. I believe they are available as hard copies. So if you wanted to get a hard copy, that's an option for you. It would be something that you would be responsible for out of pocket, but that's still an option if that's something that you prefer. So let's see, I think there is, so I wanted to share the application process as well. And we do have a start date coming up, by the way. Right now we're enrolling for the spring term, and that's going to start on January 11th. And now's the perfect time to apply for it, by the way. I wouldn't wait too much longer, just because I know that it feels pretty far away, but it's right around the corner. This is prime time to apply, but it's actually fairly simple. The first step is to complete the online application, and this is not a standard college application. It's actually very short. Usually it could be completed in about 5 to 10 minutes. So it's very simple. And then the second step would be to provide 3 recommendations. And these are Google forms that you would be providing to 3 individuals. So one would be from your spiritual director, one would be from your pastor or your superior or your apostolate leader. And then the third one would come from basically anyone that's known you for a while, with the exception of a family member. So this could be a friend, it could be a fellow parishioner, it could be a colleague. So you have some options there. And then once we have all of these items on file, then the final step would be to participate in the group interview. And these interviews always happen on a Monday evening. They go from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. And it's about 3 or 4 applicants at a time, sitting together with faculty members that are facilitating. And they're not competing with each other for a seat, but rather what they're doing is really sharing more about themselves and demonstrating their listening skills and their interpersonal skills. And it's almost like a mini mock spiritual direction session. And the facilitators get to just witness it and see that sort of experience. In fact, Maria, because you are one of the facilitators, I'm keeping an eye on the time, but would you be able to very briefly just share sort of what that looks like for the students?
The group interview is, it's an hour long, but it's usually with 4 applicants and 2 faculty members. And basically we just try to facilitate a few conversations, which the applicants are a part of. And we give scenarios. I find it enjoyable, but also the applicants do. They always are so happy to have met each other, and it's an experience. I don't know if Father Ed remembers his, but it is. It's I think people find it more pleasant than they thought.
It's nothing to be scared about, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Good. All right. Well, I know that we are running low on time, but I do have another question from one of our guests. So Peggy asked, when an instructor posts an assignment, how long do students have to respond to both the assignment and to their classmates?
Okay, well, the assignments they're posted from the time that you get into the course. All the 8 modules are there. So you could actually see each module and see what the assignments are. So you could just kind of plan your calendar around that. But every week there are due dates. I know that we try as much as possible to avoid putting due dates over weekends. So usually I think a lot of the assignments are due on a Tuesday because our weeks run Wednesday to Wednesday. I don't know if there's anything I'm forgetting there.
I found that there's typically an assignment due Tuesday evening, sometimes Monday evening, but there may be a discussion due by Saturday noon, and then you respond by Monday afternoon. So those were the days that I remember. I remember Saturday deadlines and Tuesday deadlines. So that gives someone an idea of, in case they weren't thinking about their week.
Yeah, so it's not like a monthly deadline. There are weekly deadlines. So it's important to know that. You can always reach out to your instructor. They have the capacity to give you an extension on an assignment. You can always reach out to them and ask them for that. Of course, they will, any type of a group assignment, they'll try to get you to give priority to those just because of the other 2 people of the triad might be waiting for you. But the other things, they do have capacity within the 8 weeks to, flex those assignments a little bit for you. So I think it's just a matter of reaching out to them. But yeah, you will have assignments every week.
Great. Well, thank you for all of your questions. Again, right now we are currently enrolling for the spring term. And so if this is something that you're interested in, I would highly recommend at least starting with submitting an application form. And usually it's a $25 fee, but we can waive the fee for you. There's a code on the screen. If you look at the bottom red box, the code says SDC FREE. So feel free to screenshot this. My contact information is here as well. If you have questions about the application as you're going through it and you just need a little bit more clarity, that's why I'm here. I'm really here just to support you and help you out, and just so that we can, especially if this is something that you're called to and you're a good fit for, my job is to see you through and get you into our program. So with that said, thank you all for being here. It's just been such a blessing to be able to speak with you all about the program, and also having Maria and Father Edward here to share information as well.
Yes, thanks so much, Father Ed, for coming on. And thanks, Greg, for everything.
All right.
God bless you all.
God bless. Take care.
Thank you.